I'm Ffin.
Hi. Should probably introduce myself. I'm Jeanine, and I'm the station manager of WCBG.
Amazing. It's nice to meet you. I'm Ffin, and I play guitar and sing in Delaire The Liar.
Amazing. So, can you please tell me a fun fact about you?
A fun fact about me. I'm very interested in flowers, and I want to be a florist. It's my new kind of like lockdown challenge to myself. I've decided once this is all over, I'm going to be a florist and play in a rock band, but also be a florist. A hard rocking florist. I feel like it's a niche market.
Love that. We have a little icebreaker that was asked at our freshman orientation that we ask everyone. So, if you can be any item in the kitchen, what would you be and why?
If I could be any item in the kitchen, if I could be any item in the kitchen, um, I would be. I'd be a frying pan,
Okay.
but like a cast iron frying pan, like the real heavy ones that mean business. Because I'd like to feel useful, and I think the frying pan is probably my most used cooking like utensil. Um, and also, whenever there's like in comedies or cartoons, someone breaks into their house. What's the first thing that people grab is a frying pan. So like a multi-purpose, um, heavy, like heavy rock music, which is what we do. Um, and yeah, and can fend off invaders. That's what I would say. What about you? What would you be?
I said I would be a knife because I have a sharp wit.
That is a lot. That's a lot quicker witted than mine. I want to be a frying pan so I can feel useful.
It's like when we were asked this question, we didn't know anybody in our group, and it's your first impression of somebody, and it can be pretty intimidating. Like, what do you really say in that situation?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think I just my response just spoke volumes about my self-esteem. So that's pretty cool.
So, my next question for you is, can you please describe your band's sound for me in 3 words?
Okay. Um, I think it's energetic, um, mal- energetic, emotive, and aggressive. I think we're aggressively emotional. I think is probably what I'd say.
So, I'm gonna give a little backstory of how I found you guys. I normally
Yeah.
don't tell bands this, but I actually remember this one. So,
Oh wow. Okay. Brilliant.
your music comes up in my daily mixes a lot, and every time it came on, I was like, no, I need to give my full attention to the song. Like, I didn't. This was during school, so I was listening to music while I was doing homework, and I was like,
Yeah.
no, this is the type of music that actually requires like me to sit down, and this is what I have to focus on. And then I went
Yeah.
through your whole discography, and I was like, oh my god, like where?
Oh, really? Oh, thank you so much. Oh no, that's really lovely to hear. And I was curious as well because we don't have like we don't certainly don't have a huge following in the states. So I was curious as to how that even happened. But that's amazing. Thank you so much. I'm really glad that you took the time to really dig into everything. I suppose. Yeah, that's really it's really lovely. Thank you, Jeanine.
Normally I go through like Spotify for hours and hours trying to find new artists because I love that it's great for exposure in that sense. And sometimes I find some of my favorite bands just by going through playlists and then going through the discography, and it's a great tool in that.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, I think these kind of streaming platforms, they're a double-edged sword in terms of, yeah, you can gain like a much kind of like wider platform of exposure, but there is such a huge kind of like output of new music all the time. Like it can be hard to kind of stick your head up above the parapet in that sense because there's so many other kind of like artists and it's updated like daily, and it also does work in almost like against the musician in terms of kind of like financial benefits. Um, yeah, I mean, it's like 0.005p for like per stream or something like that. But I mean, I'm like super guilty of it. You know, I just go through Spotify all the time and just like dig up like all my favorite artists that I haven't listened to in years, or like find new stuff on my daily mixes or my release radar and stuff like that. And it is really good. I don't think I've heard of like, I would have heard of like half of the bands that I listen to now if it wasn't for that tool. So, but yeah, I think that there's definitely pros and cons to it, as there are with most things, I suppose.
One of my personal gripes with Spotify is I don't like how fans can see monthly listeners. I think it should just be for the artist and the business side. Like, I really don't think I should be seeing how many listeners a band has.
Yeah, what do you think about being able to see the plays? Like, rather than the monthly interest, but being able to see how many times a song has been listened to?
So, normally when that happens, when I'm looking at a band for the first time, I will play their most listened to song, but then I will go through the discography and pick a song that might not have as many listens, because I feel like sometimes the most popular song isn't the best representation of the band. So
yeah, I think that's really true.
I don't know. I feel like sometimes the ones that have the most listens were the ones that were pushed on certain algorithmic playlists or curated playlists, and there are so many songs just as good from the artist that doesn't get the respect they should.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's bang on. And a lot of these kind of like a lot of these analytics are you know, it can be weird. You can see like an artist that's got like maybe like solidly like 3,000 or 4,000 plays on their track listing, and then just one track's got like 250,000 plays, and it's just like, it just seems like super disingenuous, and it's used as kind of like almost like as a marketing tool for the band to like push themselves to like labels or agents and stuff like that, and as well with the monthly listeners and stuff like that. You know, it's all got to be very well timed, but it's all a little bit kind of like underhand, I think, personally.
I agree. I know here, for making bills for shows, it comes into play a lot more than I would like to think it does, like for bookings and everything. And sometimes it's like there's this really cool band that might not have as many monthly listeners, but they're just as good as this other band that you booked, because I don't know. It's crazy how it works.
Yeah, and I think it kind of I think stuff like that has been like quite consistent through the age of like contemporary music. I think that there are a lot of bands that were really engaging and really pivotal for other artists, but never gained or garnered like the same recognition as some other, maybe kind of like quite as other bands that have had like a huge kind of impact onto like contemporary and popular music, but they only got to where they were because of a load of people doing loads of legwork, and they never get the recognition for it. And I think it's just becoming more evident now, just because the actual scale of it is like so much bigger. I don't know. It's a weird one.
Yeah, I also think Spotify. Well, someone once told me Spotify was kind of like the correction to people illegally streaming things from LimeWire, which I thought was interesting.
Okay.
Like, I guess I can kind of see it, because now it's like available to the public in a sense where people can, like, you don't have to pay for premium or whatever, but it's still taking away from the artist too. I don't know. I don't know how these things happen, but it's the track we're currently on, and we'll see how it goes from here.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, it's certainly impacted the way that people go about releasing music, you know? Like, people are almost kind of like hesitant or almost a little bit scared of releasing like large bodies of work that can be like really costly, because you can release your debut album and it's supposed to be kind of like a real pivotal and like transitory point in your career. And then a month goes by and no one cares anymore. Whereas like you used to be able to, I don't know, release an album and then tour it for like a year and a half or something like that, and then start on your next body of work, and people's interest and attention is still revolving around that centerpiece of work, and that just doesn't exist anymore. So now we're in kind of like you have to kind of like consistently release singles like every 3 to 4 months, otherwise your kind of like online or statistics, like your analytics from Spotify and your engagement on your Instagram, blah, blah, all this stuff, you know, it'll just take a nosedive, even in the interest of trying to like ascertain a really consistent fan base. Yeah, it's just changing the way that people consume music, and it's changing the way that people are producing it as well. And that being said, you know, I mean, you don't especially have to go to a studio that costs thousands and thousands of pounds anymore. You can produce like your records from your house. So there is different sides to it. You know, if you're not choosing the route that has like the highest kind of like expense, you can afford to keep up with that kind of momentum. But I mean, what if the creative well runs dry? What happens then? And then you're just pumping out garbage, and it's like, you know, and then that has like a negative impact on your career in that way. You know, if someone can produce like 15 years worth of work that is all just like A-list bangers, fair play to them. I'm not sure if I can, but we'll see.
If you could change one thing about the music industry as it is today, what would it be and why?
Is that acknowledging Corona or no?
If you want it to, it can.
Because like, if it's the music industry as it is now, like I'm starting to get like withdrawal symptoms from like playing shows. I miss it so much. Like the actual like behind the scenes bit I find really challenging, and especially not being around the people that you're making music with. I find conversing like over just over like WhatsApp or doing like calls and stuff like that, I find that really tasking. I very much like being around people, and I like hugging them. These are the things that I really like to do. I like playing music in a room with people, and I like hugging them, and I can't do that. So if there's one thing I could change about the music industry or the world right now, we'd get rid of Corona. Then it didn't happen. Goodbye. See ya. So I can hug my mates again. That would just be well good. But on like a more kind of like direct line about the music industry, I think yeah, if the focus could be less on analytics and more on like the quality of the content provided, I think that would just be a great thing, really. Yeah, and would certainly, you know, I don't know, separate the marketing managers from the musicians, which is a dickhead thing to say, but I think it's true.
How is lockdown by you?
It's okay. I mean, it's comparatively, I'm doing really well. You know, I'm safe and I'm healthy. Like when lockdown intensified in London, like I went back to my parents' house when I was furloughed, and I've just been like here. So I've still been getting my wage pretty much like every month, and spending very little money. So I've just bought like loads of equipment and I've just like started recording again. So which is fine, but you know, it's got certainly tasking on your mental health, and you got to make sure, and trying to stay motivated when you can't leave the house is really difficult. It's really challenging, but yeah, and can feel like really futile, because there's no like definitive end point. It's just ongoing. So yeah, it's really difficult, and I know like a lot of people have been struggling with that, but there are also people out there that have been struggling with far worse. So I feel very lucky to be in my position, but yeah, there are bad days. I think, but I think everyone has them. How about you? How have you been doing?
So I'm in New York, so I left my house for like the first time this morning. It's
Oh really?
Yeah. We were in complete lockdown until Monday, so it's been a huge adjustment period. Like, I don't know if you guys have like the drive-by birthdays that are happening, and the oh, we have a lot of little kids on my block, so we have a lot of little drive-by birthdays. Like,
oh my god, that's so cute.
they get so excited because it's like, I guess, a way for them to see their friends, but then you just hear all the honking cars for like 3 hours, so that's cute.
No, that is absolutely adorable. It's not something that's happening here. I don't think anyone is dedicated enough to other people's birthdays. I think it's just
and like, at least for me, like my graduation was canceled because of lockdown and everything that was like supposed to happen, so I'm kind of like in a place where I don't know what's happening in the next couple of months because I have a job, but also grad school is supposed to be a thing. But yeah.
And what about the have there been many protests in New York?
I'm on Staten Island, so like we're part of the city, but kind of like not. So the city has had a lot of protests. Where I am, it's been pretty peaceful, like pretty cool, because everyone's doing what they got to do in a way that's very going very well. So, but the city's been hit pretty hard.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I mean, there's been like protests in London. I'm going to go to one in Oxford. So my parents live like just outside of Oxford. Yeah, so I'm going to go to that one. But today there's been it's like a counter protest by a statue of a slave trader came down in Bristol last week. And so obviously that's drawn a lot of attention onto like the current remaining, the standing statues of these slave traders, and just kind of glorified racists all over the country. And there's one of Winston Churchill that was kind of defaced, and they've come down to protect the statue of Winston Churchill, and then have started fighting the police, who are also there to defend the statue of Winston Churchill. There's a lot of conflicting kind of ideologies there, but it's just idiots that want to fight. So that's happening in central London, like right now. Luckily, they postponed the Black Lives Matter protest, which was supposed to be today as well. So there wasn't any kind of like major conflict. But yeah, it's all been quite hectic, but obviously not as intense as what's been happening in America.
It's a turbulent time.
Yeah, it's really horrible, and the internet is just like this traumatic hellscape, like of like really horrible, footage of violence, and it's just it's really difficult. Like, and especially when you can't leave your house, you end up spending a lot of time on the internet, as I'm sure you know. I think it's like unanimous amongst our generation, who probably spend more time on the internet than they should anyway. But in this particular time, it's just it's an interesting, very turbulent time to just be existing in. I think hopefully some good will come out of it.
Like, I know from my staff, we're all over the country. Everyone's having very different experiences during quarantine.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they're easing up the lockdown in Spain, aren't they? I can't wait for that to happen here. Well, it's supposed to be happening. I mean, our death toll keeps on rising. Lockdown keeps being relaxed. And I just don't understand. Basically, I just want everyone to stay indoors until it's safe to do so then we can all hug. That's what I would like to do. Like, it's at the point now where I won't leave my house to go see my friends, even if like we maintain being 2 meters apart, because I don't trust myself. Like, I feel like if I see any of my friends in the flesh, I'll just cry, or I'll just break the rule. I'll break the rules. I'll break the law. I'll be all over them, which isn't responsible of me. So I'm just staying put. I'm just staying right here. Yeah, sorry, bit off topic there. Yeah.
What have you been doing during quarantine to keep busy?
Well, we've been doing like, it's interesting because it does force you to be creative with relatively like limited resources. So we've been doing. I've been reading as much as I can. I've been doing a little bit of drawing, trying to kind of like, especially kind of like considering the current circumstance of the world and the Black Lives Matter press, has been trying to educate myself and be more informed about kind of systemic racism and internalized racism and stuff like that. That might have just kind of be a part of the way that I conduct myself. And I've just been listening to a load of really interesting people speak. I've been playing a lot of guitar. Trying to record new stuff. We just released 2 new singles as well on Bandcamp to raise money for a charity in the UK called Exist Loudly, which focuses on creating safe spaces for the Black queer community of London, but all over the UK, which is really cool. So we've been doing that, and we've got this thing next week that's been taking up quite a bit of my time. It is going to be wicked. It's well good. So us and a load of other bands in the UK, bands you might know. There's a band called Holding Absence that are taking part. There's a band called Wargasm that are taking part. There's Luke Rainsford, who's a good friend of ours. Our bass player, actually plays bass for Luke as well. That's how we met. Lizzie Farrell as well is performing. Have you heard of Lizzie? She's fantastic. Yeah. So all these people are playing, and we've all got like a kind of like a noughties, like emo band. It's called Taste of Isolation, and we're all doing a cover set. So we've recorded. I'm not actually allowed to say. It's supposed to be a surprise. Like you don't find out until the day who it is.
It's okay.
I can tell you. Actually, this would be a fun game. Actually,
Oh no.
I can tell you. So that's everyone that's playing. I can tell you what the options are, and then I would like you to take a guess.
It's gonna be terrible. Okay.
How does that sound?
This is gonna be really bad. I'm sorry.
It's all right. It's all right. Okay, so the options are. There's My Chemical Romance,
Okay.
The Used, Papa Roach, Paramore, Deftones, and Jimmy Eat World. Now, who do you think we're doing?
Oh no. I don't know. Wait. Okay, wait. I really need to think about this. Oh no. I would think Paramore, but then I'm like, maybe not. And then, why is this hard? This is really hard. You know what? I'm not gonna guess. It's gonna be, I'll just be surprised. Let's just go with that.
Okay. All right. Yeah, you will be. It's going to be really sick. But yeah, so we've been tracking and filming that, like, and just editing and mixing and stuff like that over the past kind of like 4 or 5 days. And it's going to be sick. It's going to be so good. Everyone's going to do a really good job. So that's kept me pretty busy over the past couple of days. But over the past few months, yeah, just like accruing a load of stuff. I bought a new microphone. I've got a new interface. I've got I bought a camera as well. Honestly, this is to be fair, this is what happens when I don't go to the pub. Like I spend my money on actual like useful stuff rather than like beer. Yeah, which I suppose is a bonus, but I really miss the pub as well. I mean, that is just also like all our band meetings used to be in the pub, so. Yeah, I'm missing it twofold. 1 for the band meetings, 2 for the beer. But my sister, by the way, has been like starting to learn how to do calligraphy. Yeah, sorry, Karen.
Oh no, you're fine. I was just gonna say, like, like when your teacher would write on your homework and it was like that terribly horrible handwriting. Yeah, that's my handwriting. That helps you.
That's your handwriting.
Yeah, it's that bad.
Oh my god. Okay. Yeah, I know that's giving me a clear idea. Do you write exclusively in red pen?
Imagine.
I'm not sure if that's a thing in the States, but I know that all of my essays used to be covered in red pen, which meant that I just did everything wrong. Uh-oh.
I like to write in colored pens. It helps me memorize notes, but
interesting. I don't memorize notes anymore. I don't memorize anything. I just freewheel. That's it.
Had to for school, and here we are.
What do you study?
I was a mathematics and history double major, and now I'm going to grad school for business analytics.
Wow, okay. Amazing. And that was at Magna College. Got it right. School of Rock.
Yes. I should probably explain how it's connected. Our class building is the building you see where Jack Black's in the van and pulling up to the school for the first time. That's the building I'm in class in.
That's so good. I love it. Yeah. Honestly, I got given School of Rock as a present for Christmas when I was maybe like 11, and I honestly think that I watched it about like 4 or 5 times, like that day on Christmas, like the day where you're supposed to have like family duties. I just sat down and watched School of Rock like the whole time. It was a real pivotal movie for me. Look at me now, rocking in a rock band.
It's influenced so many people, and I didn't realize that until I started doing these interviews, because like going to school, it's kind of like, oh, this is just where I have class, or like I know a lot of the shots were actually filmed on Staten Island, but it's not really talked about much, and it's kind of sad because here we don't have any local scene of any kind, so it's kind of like, okay.
Really?
You have like maybe one bar that will let a band play on a good day if you're lucky. But
it's so weird because I know it's quite ignorant of me, but I just see, because obviously like I love a load of bands that are in America and they're touring all the time, and the tour posters are like that big, and they've just got like, they're just going everywhere. Whereas if you see like a 2-week tour in the UK, you know, the posters are like this big. There's like 7 off days in a 2-week tour, and you play like London, Birmingham, Bristol, Manchester, and then you go, and then you're into Scotland. There's nowhere. There's nowhere. So I just kind of see America as just being this place where the whole country is just a music scene. Like there is not one place that does not have a music scene. I just don't understand. Like, which is a total kind of like blanket statement for the whole of America, and I really appreciate where you're coming from. But that is quite, what's it? Yeah, that's shaken my understanding of American music culture to the core.
Like, we have cover bands, like, and then like
that'll do.
bands,
That's
like,
the scene.
no one's really making their own music. Well, let's not say no one.
Yeah.
There's like 2 bands that I know of, but they go play shows in Brooklyn or Manhattan, not here. So.
Yeah, no, I get that. Well, I don't know where here is.
Staten.
Are you in Staten?
I am in Staten
Right.
Island. I should always preface with that. Yes, I am from Staten Island,
Yeah.
and the school is in Staten Island.
Got ya. Okay, right. It's all becoming clear. Like map of Staten Island.
If it helps, it looks like Jersey. I don't know if you've been to the States or seen Jersey.
I've never been to America. I would love to go to America, but obviously I've watched Jersey Shore, which I'm assuming is. I don't know what else goes on in Jersey, but it looks like a pretty fun place if you ask me.
I can't say it's not accurate because, like,
Amazing.
my situation was from Staten Island. There we go.
Oh, okay, all right. That makes okay. That's all the context that I needed.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Have you seen the meme that's kind of resurfaced of like the situation in his like little neck brace after he headbutted a wall, just looking really sad? Like, has he got a frying pan? Is he making something? Situation meant to be.
I'm gonna move on to my next question. You mentioned you play guitar. How did you pick that as your respective instrument?
Well, I played guitar since I was about 10. I was gonna try and just pull like Jersey Shore like back into the answer, but I'm just gonna leave that where it is. Actually, funnily enough, my parents were in like pub rock bands, like covers bands, since before I was born. So my dad actually taught me how to play guitar and drums when I was about like 9 or 10, and then I was in my first band playing guitar for my year 6 talent show. Did Smoke on the Water, just me and a drummer ripping a solo very badly, but everyone loved it. And ever since, I've been in bands like pretty much ever since. But I stopped playing guitar in bands when I was like 15, and I was playing bass for like there was a post-hardcore band, and there was like a kind of like a punk band. And then me and Joey, our old drummer, like started the band just as like a way. I was writing a load of stuff on guitar, and I just wanted to kind of like play it. I didn't think that it was appropriate for the other band that I was in, and that's just kind of how it happened. It was just just 2 friends just kind of like going for this kind of like weird, like linear kind of structured, like emo punk music. I've never thought I was any good at guitar, really, and just kind of did it because I really enjoyed it. And then I really started loving playing guitar and like knowing more about guitars. And I've worked in a guitar shop for like the past 3 years now. And honestly, if you want to know anything about tone wood, I'm your guy. All right. If you want to know about tone wood, and if you want to know about fuzz pedals, I am your guy. But yeah, that's how I kind of got into it. Like, mum and dad being in rock bands, like growing up, was like a huge influence on me, and all the music that they used to play around the house. Like, I remember me and my dad learning how to play Back in Black by AC/DC, which is sick. And I got dad because I really loved Eminem. I got dad to learn how to play Lose Yourself on the guitar and then teach me how to play it. Turns out it was only 3 chords, so actually it was quite easy. But I remember that as being like a real staple. But yeah, I put it down. I put the guitar down for years, and I would just use it just to kind of like write. I only really started getting like super interested in it about like 3 years ago, and that's around the same time that the band started happening. So yeah.
I like to say the instrument picks the person, not necessarily the person picks the instrument. I know that might sound philosophical, but
super philosophical.
Things happen for a reason, and That's kind of my philosophy of how it happens.
Yeah, totally. I don't think that there is anything that sounds. This might be a little bit of a bold statement, but I don't think that there's another instrument that's quite as versatile as the guitar is. Like, who was it? There's a famous composer whose name escapes me that said like the guitar was like a mini orchestra, because you can occupy three different kind of like frequency ranges with one hand, which you can't like really do on with other instruments. And I just think like the chord voicings and how you can manipulate the sound, particularly from the electric guitar, because it's like a true metallic sound, is really interesting. And I think the process of actually kind of how the electric guitar was developed is really interesting as well. Like I just started reading, it's super lame and nerdy, but it's called The Birth of Loud, and it's all about how like the guitar was developed, the electric guitar was developed by Les Paul and Leo Fender, kind of like separately. Like everyone, it was kind of like an arms race to who could get there first, and they both took very separate avenues. They crossed paths, like obviously they're two very famous in their respective circles. They were very famous, so they crossed paths, but it was like two separate endeavors that basically like led to the same thing. It's really interesting if you love guitars like I do. But yeah, I just think it's fantastic.
So where I'm from, what they do is when you're in 4th grade, you're given like this rhythm test to see if you're competent enough to possess any musical ability.
What?
Yeah, so like they'll clap out a rhythm and then you have to clap it back, and then you take a written test of like, how many times did I hit this and what do you think this sequence was? And like you're like 9 and you're like, I don't know what's going on. And then I was selected for the program, and then they fit you for an instrument. So you don't really have a say in what you get. So it's a very different experience here for like that purpose.
That is really. Do you play an instrument now?
I played trumpet.
Amazing.
Yes. So I can understand music enough, but I can really only read treble clef. I can read bass clef,
yeah,
but not as well.
Yeah. Well, if it's any consolation, I really struggle reading music. I played violin for a short while. I don't think my brain works fast enough. Like, and this happens in conversations as well. Like sometimes my brain just doesn't like work fast enough. I need to kind of like mull on stuff. But yeah, I was playing violin and I got to my like grade 2 or something. But my teacher would get annoyed at me because I wouldn't read the music. I would just have to play it through like once, and then like I would memorize it. So like I wouldn't be reading the music. I would just be pretending to read the music, but I'd memorized playing the thing like with only like 1 or 2 times round. Which obviously when you get to like your grade exams and you have to just straight up like just sight read a piece of music, it's not helpful. And I understand why she was mad at me, because I wasn't learning. I was just doing stuff my own way. Yeah, but also I think that in not being able to have a choice like with the instrument that you're kind of like given, I think different kind of like interests and avenues of that kind of like musical exploration open up to you as you get older. Like I really wish I carried on playing piano when I was a kid, because now I've got to do everything. I do everything kind of like by ear in my own way, but I'd never been interested in it from that me stopping having piano lessons and then until about like 4 or 5 years ago. Like it's only as my kind of like taste matured and changed that I actually became invested in the instrument. And I think that can happen to you at any stage in your life. Like my mum is she's like a grade 8 flautist and now just really wants to play violin. You know, I mean, I just don't think that it's fair to just kind of like streamline or just kind of like get tunnel vision towards one instrument or force that on someone due to like an aptitude of like whether or not of how rhythmic they are. You know, I don't know, it's quite a strange thing for me. Is that like universal in America? Is that just how you?
I think in the New York public school system it is.
Really? Wow.
I know, like for me, I can't memorize for my life. I'm very good at sight reading, but I cannot remember a single piece of music for the life of me. And I know, like, at least where I am, after a while you had the choice of what type of band you would want to be in. Like there's jazz band, concert band, wind ensemble, so on and so forth. And I think it was more so like, at least here, like once you were given your instrument, which pathway do you want to go musically? more so
Yeah.
than like picking up another one, because you don't really get the opportunity after like 6th grade here to pick another instrument up, at least in the school system. You can on your own.
Yeah.
But that really happened.
Yeah, certainly. I think like, and also personally, like I never really, I didn't engage with music in school. I mean, I enjoyed music lessons, but getting like instrument lessons in school, I found really annoying. And this is, I mean, I found it quite difficult being told what is the correct way to express myself on a particular instrument. I think, which sounds douchey, but I don't think. And in doing that, I know that the way I play guitar is actually quite difficult. And when I've had to like teach people how to play our songs and stuff like that before, I understand that like sometimes like my hands just like look like spaghetti like on the fretboard, like they get like so tangled, and I just kind of like train my hands to be in there because I pick out like every like note voicing in the chord by ear as I'm going, so it's not necessarily like the easiest shape to like fall into, but I think the more that you kind of like, it can kind of take the magic out of it a little bit, or at least in my experience, if you always know what you're playing. If you know, or if you, yeah, if you, what am I trying to say? Yeah, I don't know, I much preferred kind of like finding it out on my own rather than being told what to do, I think. And so I'd never really engaged with instrument lessons at school or really having teachers to teach me how to play an instrument. I much preferred doing it off my own back and kind of discovering things for myself. But people like, I mean, working in a guitar shop for the past kind of like few years, you have to be very conscious and and appreciative that like everyone learns differently, and everyone has. When I actually went to university for 6 months to study vocals, and one of the most engaging things that my tutor there told me was that like you can, because everything in terms of kind of like breath control and support and stuff like that, because it's all going on inside of you, you need it kind of like taught to you in a way that just kind of clicks. Like you can be told the same technique like 10 or 20 times, and it really not kind of like makes sense in your body, like how you position everything. You can't see what you're doing. It's not like fingers on a fretboard. You have to be able to feel like how to support your diaphragm and where you're breathing to, and how you should hold your shoulders and your back and your knees. But yeah, you could be told it 1,000 different ways, and only one of them will make sense to you in the way that you engage with your body. And I just think that's really a really interesting, quite like a poignant attitude towards teaching. And from the teacher's point of view, you have to know that your method of teaching won't be applicable to every student, and it's your kind of like duty as an educator to find out what that is. What is that access point to really deliver the message, I think is really interesting. Yeah, and that's what I learned from uni, and then I dropped out.
It was a good tip though, because I think
Very
it's so
good
true
tip.
in everything, really. Like that can apply to anything.
Yeah, totally. I mean, obviously it gets more complicated when you're, I don't know, a lecturer and you're dealing with classes of like 100 or something. I don't know. I honestly, I've never been to a lecture in my life. I don't know how universities work. But but obviously that's going to be more difficult, and it is kind of like then the responsibility of the student to find out a way of engaging in where they can get the most out of like whatever's being taught or spoken to them. Yeah, and also watching and kind of listening to a lot of lectures and interviews at the minute regarding race. Yeah, I've just found it really interesting and engaging. I'm trying to find, there's lots of different opinions and ways to frame it that make like a lot of sense, and a lot of people can be saying the exact same thing, and one of them will really resonate with you. Yeah, I think it's applicable to lots of different things. Yes.
So we have a question that I'm sorry, it's a question. Question is, what is your opinion of releasing an artist's unreleased music after they've passed away? Should it be released or should it not?
That's a good question. And it's difficult because I think people profiting from artists' death selfishly is morally fucked. like I think labels trying to squeeze every penny out of artists that have more often than not died in incredibly tragic circumstances is abhorrent behavior. But I think if the money is to go to help supporting the families or goes to charity, because I mean there's a huge amount of kind of like suicide that goes on in the music industry. If it was to go to aid those charities, I think that's a really beneficial thing. But a lot of it is really kind of like a capitalist and greed fueled, and I think that is disgusting. And in that circumstance, no. But what that would take, like for that to be like a viable option, is basically the dismantlement of the entire music industry and then it start again. Which, don't get me wrong, I think would be quite cool. But it would be a big effort. But no, I would say generally speaking, I think it's fucked. And also I think that if the artist wanted the music to be released, it would have been released, you know? Showing somebody else's unfinished work, I think is a disservice to the artist's integrity, would be my thing. What about you?
I think this should be negotiated into a contract or present in an artist will, because then the artist does have a say in a sense of what's happening. Like, it's up to the person, not necessarily the corporation.
Yeah, totally. It's quite a daunting thing to put to someone, isn't it? You know, you sign a label deal. Yeah, just in case you die mysteriously, by the way. Can we still release your shit? Yeah. But no, I think it's something like it should be acknowledged, just because, I mean, it's coming for us all, you know? If you're still writing and releasing music by the time, you know, in your 70s or your 80s, like Leonard Cohen, or I don't know how old Tom Waits is, but he must be knocking on a bit. If you're still kind of like working that late into the career, then yeah, it probably should be acknowledged that like what happens with the rights to your music and unreleased music after you pass away. No, it's interesting.
So this question kind of came about because of the Little Peep songs that were released like a year ago now, and they kind of sound like these unfinished bedroom demos. And then Mac Miller's Circles came out, which had consent from his family and was worked on with the producer who was working on the album with. So there's so many different ways this comes about. Even like Prince has a vault of songs that haven't been released.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see what could potentially happen with this.
Yeah, and also I think it is quite like subjective to the artist as well. Like, I know that if any of the demos that I've been working on were released, if I died, I would be appalled. Like, I hate people hearing my unfinished work. It makes me feel like I'm not portraying the idea to its best kind of like potential. So I'd be appalled. But there are people that like showing their demos all the time, and that's fine too. Like, it's such like a specific and quite a subjective topic that I think, it's the circumstance can vary and the outcome can vary. But as a premise, and my opinion on it, I don't think it should happen. If some kind of fucking corporation that doesn't actually care about the artist is going to profiteer and financially benefit from it, I think that's bullshit.
I agree. I think there's just so much happening, and it's happening more frequently than it has in the past, and it's kind of upsetting to see that, because you don't know if the artist would have been happy with what was released.
Yeah, exactly. You might get yourself haunted.
What is your favorite part of a song that you've written?
Did you say favorite part of the song that I've written? Okay, right. I think Delaire has kind of brought forth some of my favorite pieces and some of my like best songwriting. I think like one of like my proudest moments is probably the first song I ever wrote when I was like 12. You know, when you finally gain access to like that ability, that's really interesting. And don't get me wrong, the song is fucking garbage. It's hot shit, but in a bad way. But you know, there's something quite special about that moment when you realize that like it's not just the people that you look up to and idolize that can do that. You know what I mean? So something like that. But I think from like the Delaire stuff, there's a song that's like unreleased that I think is probably the best song we've ever written, and the best song that I've ever written. But obviously can't talk about that. There's a line in Medicine, I think, which is off our debut EP, first track. Actually, there's 2 tracks on that. There's a line in Medicine that says, "I'm not scared of my friends, just disappointing them." And I think that is probably one of my like favorite lines that I've written, and the way that that song kind of like progresses, I really like as well. And actually, that was the first song that was written for this project, and it started on Christmas Day. It was written. The lyrics were written in my parents' house here in our garden. That's where I started. So like, do you know? Are you familiar with the song?
Yeah.
So yeah, so when it started, it was oh, a smokestack sticking beneath the window. Like I was sat, like we've got a bench in our garden. I was sat there and I was having a cigarette, and I was watching like the smoke stay in the air, like because it was so crisp and it was so clean. And I just got this guitar, and I was feeling really positive and really energetic about the whole idea of this being like a next part of my kind of like music career after being playing bass in this band for ages, you know, this, and just being in at that point, it just being in a two-piece with like one of my best friends was an amazing kind of prospect for me. So that song, and then when I just think the way that it works together is really kind of like quite special, and it's quite like a poignant song to me. And then in the same EP, there's a song called Fervor, which is only like a minute and a half, but that's probably, I love the lyrics in that. I think it's quite charged. It's quite like, it's a fucking sad song. It's a sad song, and it's really kind of like angry. But I just think it just works really well. And we got the opportunity to open for a band called Creeper at their show before they like went off the grid for a year. And with that song Fervor, we used to go into it by playing Feeling Good first by Nina Simone, and it worked so well. And I remember the energy in the room changed, like when we played Feeling Good into Fervor, like because no one had we'd only been a band for like 4 months in like the public eye at that point. And we got this amazing opportunity because Will from Creeper has seen us play in Southampton. And then as soon as we played Feeling Good and like just crashed into it, the energy in the room changed. It was like amazing. So that's a really special one as well. And then I think Our House is a Church, the hook in that, the inarticulate, that is probably one of my favorite hooks that I've written. I think that's really cool. So yeah, those three. I think you only asked for one, but okay. There we go.
When I was going through your discography, I was just blown away. I couldn't even put words onto what I was feeling because I'm not a very emotional person. But when I was listening to your music, I was just like, oh my God. Like, it was explaining things that maybe I couldn't explain myself, which was a fantastic feeling.
Oh my God, thank you. Thank you so much. You know, I often say that, like, I'm emotional for, like, I'm emotional for the both of us, or you know, at least the emotion. But I can't believe that's actually in this instance being true. I have enough emotions for the both of us, and that's like, that's amazing. No, I'm really glad that is that yeah, there's something that we've produced has had that kind of effect, and in a positive way, I hope. But yeah, it's tricky. I think like there's what I've always found really interesting in terms of like lyric context, and a lot of like my favorite writers is they kind of like pose an accessible kind of like emotion to you in a way that you've never felt it before, and that's certainly an energy that I try to take in with like the lyricism and the music of this project, and I'm just really glad that is something that's happened, you know, without me even saying it. You said it first. Sick.
Everything complimented so nicely. Like, I had to listen a couple of times because, as I said earlier, like, this required my attention. It wasn't something I can be doing something else, because the songs deserve more than that to me. And just the way the actual instrumentals complemented the lyrics so well, it was just, there was so much to take in, and it was such a great experience. So thank you.
Oh, that's wicked. No, thank you for listening. That's amazing. Oh, my heart.
This next question to me kind of explains a person better than a person might be able to. And the question is, what is your favorite album in your personal collection? And by personal collection, I mean you physically own the album.
Oh, okay. Yeah, somewhere at the bottom of the river between Vega and Altair. I've got the vinyl downstairs.
I love how
That's it.
like
That's the. But oh, but yeah, no, straight up. I mean, I've been thinking about it a lot. I've been thinking about a lot of like the kind of the influential albums in my life, and I just think that one literally changed the way that I listen to music, and I don't think I've ever had an album do that since or before, really. It changed my understanding of how music can be written and performed. It changed my understanding of kind of like of the structure of lyricism and storytelling. No, that band is incredibly special for me, and that was the album that really changed it. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm a huge Paramore fan, I'm a huge My Chem fan, Fall Out Boy, Panic at the Disco, Take It Back Someday, all of those kind of like noughties, emo bangers. I'm a massive fan of like Bon Iver and Nick Cave and Tom Waits and Sparkle Horse and Pixies less so, but I mean they certainly played a part in my kind of upbringing because my parents loved them. But La Dispute are one of my favorite bands, and that is just that album. Just even it might not even be my favorite album by them, but it is the most important to me.
I really don't have to think of answers. Okay. Okay, I have two. Yeah, I have two. Cheap Trick live at the Budokan. It was my dad's, so
amazing.
Special place in my heart. And then
yeah, of course,
The Planets by Gustav Holst. It's instrumental. No.
Wow.
It changed my perception of how I listen to music, even though it's like a huge classical collection. Like Mars is probably my favorite one, and like listening to it and then actually having a chance to play it kind of shaped how I listen to different things in music. And the layering of like so many different instruments when you're taught to maybe your part might not be the most important at this time and somebody else's is, to hear all those different background pieces working together, it's insane. So I would say this.
That's amazing. Can you name the planets in order? Can you name the planets in order?
Did you learn the acronym?
I've got a little rhyme. Oh, well, it's not a rhyme, but it's a thing that my dad's taught me.
There is an acronym. Wait, what's the acronym?
It wouldn't be a good acronym, I don't think.
Terrible. I think it was a terrible acronym. Wait.
I think it was one word.
Your rhyme is probably better than this acronym. I think it was my very... Oh, crap. It's something... I'm looking up the acronym. See?
Yeah, this is it. This is it. My very easy method just speeds up naming planets. This is it. That's it.
At one point.
My very easy method just speeds up naming planets.
Yeah, that was not the one I learned. Wait.
Monkeys?
Yeah, it was one with monkeys. Or was that for the, that might have actually been for how we convert measurements, because we don't use the metric system. Like, we have really weird mnemonics. Like, we had, like, the King Henry's Drunken Uncle Drinks Chocolate Milk to teach us how to, like, convert in the metric system.
What?
Really? King Henry's Drunken Uncle Drinks Chocolate Milk. Kilo, hecto, deca, unit, milli, centimeter.
Honestly, it's like you're speaking a different language to me.
That was one of the stupid ones, and then we had one for like math, and it was PEMDAS.
See, we had BODMAS in maths, which was brackets, powers of, divide, multiply, addition, subtraction.
Okay, they're similar.
Which is something like.
Last but not least, what are your goals for 2020? You can do the year or the decade.
Well, the year isn't looking super good at the minute.
Yeah.
So it's difficult, but I think, trying to create new ways to remain creative and a consistent kind of like output is paramount. the 2 tracks we released was going to be part of a larger body of work, but considering the circumstance, it seemed more appropriate to just fucking get them out there and try and contribute to something that can just that can help kind of like facilitate safer spaces in the UK. For peoples of color, you know, in the UK, especially with everything else that's kind of like going on. So now it's just kind of like, keep writing and see what else we can kind of like create out of the back end of that. I would love to be able to play just like one show, just one like by the end of the year, because there was a lineup change at the end of last year. Like me and Joey, who started the band, Joey took a step back to kind of like focus more on himself. We're still best friends and everything like that, and it's all good, and I can't wait to hug him too. But we brought in Em, who plays bass, and Chaz, who plays drums. And that all happened at the start of this year when we released Shovel and Lock for a Reason. So we've only played 2 shows together.
Wow.
We've only played 2 shows together. Me and Joe have played loads of shows together, and that's like all amazing. But we only had the chance to play 2, and then lockdown happened. And then it's just like, what the fuck? So if we could just play one more show, I'd be happy. I would love to play more shows than that, but if we can play one more show until like by the end of 2020, I'll be really happy. For like the next 10 years, I think like what's really important is being completely uncompromising with our standard and quality of work, making sure that like we're progressing in a way that is kind of interesting and exciting to us, and kind of almost hoping that will transfer to the people that like listen to our bands. I think it's really important to like always have yourself in mind as well. Like, is it something that you would actually like to listen to, or are you just churning out shit that people want to hear? You know, because more often than not, the people that want to hear it are the people that want to monetize it rather than enjoy it. And I think that it's really important to kind of like remain true to your own kind of like artistic integrity. So over the next 10 years, that's all I really want to do. And play fucking loads of shows. Like, I know obviously you've never been to one of our shows before, but I'm very, very fond of stage diving. And just to get that feeling again, honestly, it's gonna be the first thing I'm gonna do is just be straight up a speaker stack, and I'm just gonna make people catch me by the ass. That's it. See you all down there.
There's nothing like live music.
Exactly.
Recorded tracks are fantastic, and I love listening to them, but there's something special about hearing something live.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's something really cathartic for the performer as well. I mean, it's my favorite part of the process is performing. So, yeah, I can't wait to kind of get that. But yeah, I think those are the things that I'm aiming towards for the rest of this year and for the next 10 years.
I love that. And whenever you come to the States, or whenever I go to England, if it ever happens, I cannot wait to see your band play live.
You're on guest list permanently. All right.
So thank you again. It was such a pleasure.
Absolutely. An hour flew by.
Yes.
Thank you so much for kind of like investing in our stuff. It's really gratifying and really humbling as well. So thank you.
WCBG will always be here to support you guys, even after I've graduated.
Amazing. All right. Well, let's do it. See you later.
Bye.